You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Ryan Anderson, CEO and founder of Filevine. And Ryan is in Salt Lake City, Utah. How are you?
Benny, I am good. Nice chatting with you. It sounds like it's later for you than it is for me, but excited to be on your podcast. I've heard great things, and
Thank you.
Glad to be here today.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see Filevine out there, and I'm pumped to have you guys on the show and learn more about what you do. What's it like there? Just a little background, like what's it like out there in Utah? I've actually never been out there.
Oh my gosh! Well, let's get that fixed. You're not going to find a bigger Utah booster than me. I think it's just perfect state to live in. It gets a little warm in the summer, but I don't mind it. So it's probably 90 degrees today. I am looking at just, 5 minutes from my house, beautiful Wasatch Mountain Range. It's always stunning, but this time of year, it's particularly stunning. From my house, I can hop on my mountain bike and without having to get in a car and ride the Bonneville Shoreline Trail or 100 different other ones. I can go on really just incredible kind of world-class hiking, again, just minutes away from the house. Wow. There's mountain lakes for boating, and then of course in the winter world-class skiing, which I take advantage of. There's probably wow. Yeah, but if I'm in town, I'm on the mountain with the wife and kids. So okay. Yeah, on the weekends, yep. So every Saturday, I'm skiing. So I absolutely love it. Gosh, I just don't think there's a better place to live.
No, that's awesome that you like actually take advantage of like what your home state has to offer. I'm from Maine, and I'm so proud to be from Portland, Maine. But my parents were originally from New York, so it's like I don't know if that's why I didn't really get into like all the winter.
Yeah.
Fishing, like that sort of thing. But anyway, this podcast is about you, Ryan. So like, let's get back to you went to BYU.
Did.
So what was that experience like? And I think you went to law school there too, right?
I did. I spent a lot of time in Provo, Utah, which was super enjoyable. Provo's an hour south from here. I loved it. I met my wife at BYU, and then of course she was a teacher at a school. She taught second grade, not too far from Provo, and so I applied to a bunch of different schools. I was fortunate to have a bunch of different options, but BYU just made a ton of sense for me, given that she could support me while I was in law school and had much better health insurance than I could have gotten on my own. So, So went to BYU and took advantage of her time teaching second grade, and that's how I started.
So, what was the law school experience like for you?
Gosh, I really loved it. There's good and bad, of course, but I really enjoyed BYU Law School. I was involved on the moot court team, so I traveled around the country. I'm really proud of sort of some achievements that my team and I did while I was out there, on the moot court tournament circuit. Okay. But I really love law school. I've always had an eye for kind of legal argumentation. I think even before I went to law school, and maybe even before I went to college, I would routinely kind of read like Supreme Court opinions. Yeah. I found sort of the reasoning very fascinating. And so when I got to law school, the argumentation, the reasoning, the rhetoric, I found it incredibly fascinating. So I really enjoyed it. And felt like I had a great experience at BYU Law School. BYU is a unique place for a number of different reasons, you might imagine. But those really suited me. I'm an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as the LDS Church. And so for me, it made a ton of sense to be there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So you go through law school. Did you practice for a little while? Is that what happened? How long?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So how
my
long
wife
did you
is,
practice?
yeah, about 7 years. So my wife, I met her up here in Provo, but she's from Las Vegas. Her family's from Las Vegas, and so
Okay.
when we were thinking about kind of places to work, Vegas made a ton of sense. She really wanted to be down there with family. That made sense to me. So I took a job at a personal injury firm in Las Vegas and learned a ton. Had a great experience there. Worked for a group that was kind of really aggressively practiced litigation, and I think set me up to kind of learn the workings of not just how to handle like a personal injury claim, but a personal injury trial. And I'm sure I have conducted, gosh, I don't know the exact number, but I would not be at all surprised if I've conducted over 1,000 depositions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, been to many hundreds of hearings, I have to think, and handled, 5 to 10-ish trials in my time, whether second or first chair, and had some success doing that.
How far is Vegas from Salt Lake City or Provo, rather?
Close, yeah, a driving distance. So
Okay.
from Salt Lake, it's about 6 hours, depending
So
on.
I gotta just ask, like, I have to ask this. So you went from Salt Lake City, which seems pretty like straight and straight edge and like whatnot, to going to
Yeah.
Vegas. Like, is there any like? I mean, I don't know. You weren't like on the Vegas Strip doing personal injury, were you? I mean, maybe you were.
Not on the Vegas Strip,
Okay.
no.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, look, Las Vegas has. Well, first of all, I've obviously moved back to Utah since, and I've been back in Utah now for about 5 years. But I absolutely love Las Vegas. I still love Las Vegas. I loved it when I was there. It's an incredibly gritty, hardworking town.
Yeah.
And the legal community in particular, I found to be not only sort of hardworking and intense, which is sort of, I like that. I'm an intense guy, so I sort of enjoy
Yep.
that culture, but really bright and kind of sharp and sharp edged. And, the practice of law down there was intense. And it suited me. I like people who take what they do really seriously. And certainly litigation in Las Vegas was done at a very high level. There's the personal injury bar files a lot of lawsuits in Las Vegas. They're in trial a lot, and
Yep.
they actively litigate their cases. So I really enjoyed that culture.
Yeah.
As far as sort of, the culture of Vegas, look, in any city, you can find people across the spectrum. And,
Sure.
the people I became friends with, I just think we're amazing people and friends to this day. So I really love Las
Great.
Vegas. Yeah.
That's great. And so you come back. So how long did you practice for before you came up with this idea of Filevine?
Yeah, so probably 3 to 4 years before started thinking about the initial idea, maybe 5.
Okay.
Um, and it was around kind of, well, we launched in March of 2015, but we had been working on the software for, I'm going to say about 18 months before that, maybe 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
And it was really the result of a friend of mine who came into the office, and I said, hey, like, I want to show you this. I have this Google spreadsheet of all my cases and exactly what the next steps were that I had to take. And I thought I had produced something pretty cool. I had kind of the Google Doc I was working off of had some customizations to it, and I thought I had done a pretty clever job building what I know now was basically a rudimentary case management system on Google Sheets. But I said to my friend, like, could we recreate this? And I remember him saying, yeah, that's like job one. Let's do that. And so this buddy of mine who was a developer took a bunch of time with me and with others, people I introduced him to, and said, hey, I think we can build something here. He wasn't all that interested in doing it with me. He had another job, but he said, hey, I'll give some schematics and plans and some of this product work I've done over to another developer, and you can have them help you. But my friend's name was Jim Blake. And I said, Jim, if we're gonna build this piece of software, like, there's no one I want to do it with more than you. I've got to have you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
fortunately, I was able to convince him to start it with me. And so he coded the initial version of Filevine and probably, 2 or 3 versions beyond that. And we were eventually able to launch in March of 2015.
That's amazing. So did you stay working as a lawyer while you were kind of growing?
Right, kind of gradually. Yeah, as Filevine grew, I drew down the amount I practiced.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I kind of put my official leave date is kind of somewhere in early 2017.
So what would be like your definition of an entrepreneur?
A creator of a product or service with a vision to have product or service change lives for the better.
Okay. I like that. So do you have any advice for maybe someone who wants to take an alternative path out of law school? Like maybe they practice a little while and they come up with this killer idea. Like what advice could you give somebody?
Totally. So first thing I would say, and this is like a common mistake people make, I still have people come up to me now that Filevine's been successful, and they'll say like, hey, I've got this idea. I can't tell you the idea because I don't want you to steal it, but I have this really good idea. What do you think I should do about it? And my first statement is like, look, dude, you don't have like your idea is not as good as you think it is. And even if, and it's not that it's good or bad, it's that ideas in and of themselves are just a minuscule part of what actually needs to be done to make something successful. Benny, you've made Lawyer Stories successful.
Thank you.
You weren't the first person to come up with the idea of a podcast, right?
No.
You're not the first person to come up with the idea of a legal podcast, but
That's
to
true.
make it successful, you have put in an enormous amount of work and talent and execution, and you've made a bunch of right decisions along the way to get it to where you've gotten it. And so like the idea to have a podcast wasn't unique. Your execution has been unique. And I would say that's true for me too. So Filevine wasn't the first case management system out there. There were people before us, and there are people after us. What I think has set us apart is our level of execution. We make mistakes, but that's what sets you apart. So going back to the advice I would give somebody is talk about your idea, test the viability of your idea with others who you respect.
Right.
Because even if they were to take it and go with it, which is not going to happen, I think it's extremely unlikely. But even if they were, you just have to out execute them and you'll still win. And
I also think execution, even if you give your idea to somebody, it's not like they're going to go out and like execute your idea, especially if it takes a lot of work. And it also takes a lot of consistency, right? Like you didn't grow this overnight. Like it took like every day just sitting there and like coming up with, whatever you were doing there with the Google Docs and, consistency. So I totally feel that.
Yeah. For me, that's huge. I mean, if you're willing to get up, work on your idea every day, get kicked in the teeth when things go wrong, and get back up and say, all right, I'm still going to figure it out. Today was a bad day. I took a couple steps back, but I'm going to take some steps forward tomorrow. If you're willing to do that over and over again, hundreds of times, thousands of times, you'll make your idea work.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Thank you. So on your website, on the Filevine website, I went on there, and what I really liked, one of the few things I really liked was you have a letter from CEO Ryan Anderson.
Right.
And I read, and one of the paragraphs, there's a couple of paragraphs, I mean, it was all good, but one paragraph I kind of wanted to highlight here on our episode, and I wanted to share it. So this is when you were practicing law, right? So the claims on my time were unforgiving, and yet so many of my challenges were unrelated to actual legal work. I remember getting questions from clients, knowing the answer was somewhere in the file, but could not be found. I'd delegate an assignment to a paralegal only to follow up a week later and have him tell me he didn't remember the assignment. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I had missed a deadline, only to find out an extension had been granted without my knowledge. So like what I really took from this paragraph is like, this is not somebody just starting something to start. Like you lived this, like you lived what you created and manifested in Filevine. And I don't know if you want to speak any more about that. I mean, this was like your personal experience, and an idea that you really, like you talk about, executed coming to life.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate it, and thanks for reading the letter. You are 100% correct. I felt daily pain of practicing law. Again, I really enjoyed it, but it's hard. Being a lawyer is hard. It's stressful. The deadlines are real. The consequences are real. The phrase I now use is high stakes. Being a lawyer is a high stakes profession. You can win big, you can lose big.
Right.
So the decisions you make and the way you execute, the way you comport yourself, the way you handle things really makes a difference in the outcome. And look, I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to be a good lawyer. I didn't want to make mistakes, but gosh, like the volume, the intensity, and the chances for error are they're really high. They're really numerous. And so I am not a naturally organized person at all. Nobody, if they know who I am and have spent some time with me, no one's listening to the podcast going, "That's not true. Ryan's super organized." Like they're nodding their heads and saying, like, he's understating the case. Ryan is completely disorganized. And I am generally, a pretty disorganized guy. I'm very forgetful. But I didn't want to forget anything important. And so I learned very quickly that when a new piece of information on a case came to me, it was my duty to put that piece of information in a place where A, it would be safe, and B, something about the system that I put it in would make it come back to me so that I would take action on it at the appropriate time.
Okay.
So if a client says, "Hey, take a look at this document," if a client says, "Hey, I lost my job as a result of this accident," any number of pieces of information, whether it's from a court, an opposing attorney, there's information coming at you all the time. You have to take action on that information. And the failure to take action can result in really serious consequences. And so the very first problem I wanted to solve is managing all this inbound information and putting it in a place where it would come back to me when I needed to take action on it. And so the very first thing that we built in Filevine was a task management system. And it was for me to quickly say, okay, this is a thing that happened. I need to take action on this thing. I can't take action right now. I've got too much to do right this minute, but I can take action on Thursday, or I can take action on Monday. And so I would just task it out for a particular day.
Yep.
And to this day, the very first product we built is still, in my opinion, the very best thing we do in Filevine. I think we are the best task management system, all the case management systems out there. And it's the direct result of me feeling this pain of kind of a volume of input coming at me that needed to be organized and filtered in such a way that I would remember to do it and not miss stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's so tough to keep track of a lot of different, my job has a lot of different, deadlines, monthly, quarterly, yearly. And it's just, I love that. It's like a boomerang. You got to put it in there and have it come back to you when it's
right.
Do you get like if something's due like on a Thursday, will you get a reminder on like a Tuesday or a Monday, or is it like, okay, all right. So you can kind of set it.
Schedules are, they're customizable, Benny.
Okay.
Happy to walk you through a demo after this is over, but yeah. Depending on sort of how you set up your Filevine system, reminder schedules are customizable. They can come at you different frequencies and intervals and in different kinds of ways. And we're constantly thinking about how to do that. I'll just real quickly say, I think one of the problems of our day and age is actually sort of reminder and notification bloat and overload, such that I think there's so many reminders hitting our email inboxes and, now even our phones, that I think we stop noticing them, which is a really scary thing. So I've been trying to figure out.
I see what you're saying. Like it just becomes sort of like a poster on the wall after a while.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. So we think a lot about how to lessen them, to make them, meaning the reminders, how to make them fewer and more relevant and easier for you to take action on them. So that's a lot of what we think about right now on the product, is how to make that easier.
So these in the task management system, like do these reminders have links, or like what makes it different than say like me using Outlook. I mean, I don't have a law firm, but I have like I use Outlook for my work email, and I have reminders that pop up. I use my iPhone when I need to, I'm thinking about something I need to do tomorrow at 11 a.m. Like, I'm always writing reminders in that thing. So, like, tell me a little bit about like the task management system piece.
So every task is associated with either a case or what we call a project.
Okay.
Um, there are things you have to do as a lawyer that aren't necessarily related to a case, but of course, a lot of what you have to do is related to a case. But every task is related to a larger case, and we try to put a ton of context around it. So you can attach a document to
Okay.
a to do. You can you can tag them with various categories. You can set sort of you can notify people in different ways when you set a task, and you can tag various people on a task so that certain people may need to see it but not necessarily take action on it, and
Okay.
others maybe must take action on it. So we try and make them as contextual as possible. Such that somebody looking at a task knows all the history. And I'll give you one example. And I think we do this particularly well. And I don't mean to take over your podcast and make it an ad for Filevine, but since it is central to my story as to why I built the
Yeah.
product.
I want to hear all about it. Are you kidding me? I see you guys on social media. I see you guys out there. I've been seeing Filevine for a while, so I'm happy to hear about this.
Look, I think it's fair to say that in certain segments of legal, we are now the predominant case management system, just by virtue of, just the number of customers we have today. I think exceeds our competitors, certainly in a number of different fields. I think personal injury in particular, but some others as well. And so it's grown really well. I'm really proud of it. But yeah, so we want tasks to be conversational to a degree, because a task, when you receive it, if the task is file the complaint, right? A lawyer may have a task to file the complaint. Maybe the statute of limitations coming up, and the lawyer receives a task from Filevine that says file the complaint. Well, okay, you could just have a button that says done. But if I look at that task 6 months later and say, okay, it was marked done, but what does that mean? Like, did it actually happen? And if it did happen, were the right parties named? Were the right defendants named?
Wow.
Did we get the right causes of action in there? And did the client get to review the complaint before it was filed? There's all these highly contextual, call them subtasks or dependencies, that have to happen for that task to actually get done in a meaningful way. And there may be any number of blockers that could happen to that task. So again, back to the example of filing a complaint, it may be that I see that task come over, I maybe then reassign the task to a paralegal, but that paralegal says, gosh, I actually don't know the name of all the defendants. Maybe I need to name the landowner and I don't even know who that is and I can't really figure it out. Now I need to go back to Ryan or go back to somebody else and find that information. And I, as his supervisor or her supervisor, I need to understand what is blocking them and what can I do to kind of help them solve that. And so if you look at a Filevine task, there may be any number of comments and reassignments to a task like file the complaint, and you can read through the entire history of how that happened and how it got resolved, and then have the final complaint attached that got filed in the court system. And first of all, that's helpful just because everyone stays on the same page. But for me, what's really magical about it is 6 months from now, when somebody says, hey, did we file the complaint? Did we name this party? I can say, no, we didn't, but here's why. We talked to the client and the client didn't want us to name this party. And here's the discussion about that right here. And we can remember all that. And so again, I think that was the problem I was trying to solve. So Filevine was really good at that before it got good at anything else.
And so it's like a vine too, right?
That's what we call Filevine. That's right.
I got it. So it's a file that like creates a vine. Like,
you got it. You got it, Benny.
Okay, all right. So who are your primary users right now? Are we targeting like big law firms, small law firms, solos?
Yeah, gosh, it's across the spectrum. I would say solos are the users we see the least, but we certainly have solos using the system. I tend to think that people get the most benefit of Filevine when they have between 5 and 6 total people at their law firm. And the reason I think that's a magic number is that it's at that number that I found lawyers start to have a management problem. So if it's just 1 or 2 people at the law firm, like you're finishing each other's sentences, your paralegal or your associate attorney or your partner, they know everything that you know, right? Every case, they know every case, they know everything that's going on with every case. You don't really have to get together and even hold meetings about the cases because you're sitting one office away, you're talking to each other every single day. Your sort of shared mind and consciousness around a case is really, the fidelity around that's really high. But every time you add somebody in, another staffer, it becomes a lot more difficult for everyone to be on the same page about all the cases. And what I've seen, and this is just by observation, but it's been really consistent for me, is when you hit that 5 or 6 total people in office number, all of a sudden, Stacy, the managing attorney, says, I could have sworn I told Bob the paralegal to do that, and he says he doesn't remember it. And now I'm not sure. And what was the last thing we did on the Smith case? And all of a sudden, people can't remember because work is being done that isn't being done by them, or it's being done while they're in court, or it's being done while they're on vacation. And so to scale, lawyers want to hire more people, which makes a ton of sense. But as soon as you do that, you start having management problems. And Filevine's really good at making those management problems a heck of a lot easier to solve because we take that communication, especially communication around tasks, really seriously.
I think you just answered my next question, which was actually another excerpt from your letter, the CEO letter from Ryan Anderson, which Filevine will not make all the pressures of being a lawyer disappear, but it will help you manage. So I think that was sort of reverse. I like that because I think it's sort of like I don't want to say it's like a humbling thing, but it's honest, like it's not gonna, there's no big, huge promise about making your lawyer life difficulties disappear, but it definitely will help you be organized. So what's
I wrote that. People don't know, but I like to write, and so I wrote that letter.
Yeah,
myself.
I think it's great. I think it's great. So what about AI? Are you guys working with AI, and how's that sort of integrated into Filevine?
I think we're at a really special time in legal. I think it's really special, a little bit scary, but mostly super exciting. So Filevine is absolutely working with AI. We have AI features that have already been released. 2 major ones, demands AI, which is applying AI to personal injury demands. And the second is AI fields, which is maybe already our most popular product. I think we sell more AI fields than we do anything else except for Filevine Core, our main platform.
Okay.
And AI fields is essentially embedded AI within Filevine, where we take data that sits in certain fields, documents really. We take that data that's sitting in documents, and we can apply any number of prompts to these documents and pull out information and summarize things. So we can.
Wow.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's magical.
Okay, can you give me an example of like how that works?
Yeah. So we can take a deposition. We can take a 150-page deposition, and we can summarize that deposition. And honestly, Benny, if you've read depositions and had to summarize them, if we showed you what we could do, your jaw would drop. And there's a reason we're selling this product hand over fist, because these summaries that get built are beautifully written. They have high fidelity to the actual transcript of the deposition. We see, I don't want to say zero, especially in a podcast that's meant to be disseminated to a lot of people, but we see very little, almost zero hallucination. And you can count on these. These are really well done.
What do you mean by hallucination? I'm sorry, I just have to stop.
Oh, sorry. So AI is sort of famous for having this hallucination problem where I'll get a little bit geeky for a second. LLMs, large language models, which is what ChatGPT runs off of, they are what are called probabilistic models. ChatGPT is really just making a bet that based on the question you asked, the next few words are the words you want to see.
Oof.
Yeah, it's really just making a massive bet on what it thinks you want to hear based on what you wrote. And it's probabilistic, meaning that if you ask ChatGPT the same question twice, you will not get the same answer. You might get a similar answer, but there's a very good chance you will get a different answer.
Okay.
It's just making a probabilistic decision about what you want to see. All large language models are like that. Because of that mechanism, because that's the way these LLMs work, sometimes they make stuff up. I can tell you, if you go on ChatGPT right now and ask it things that it doesn't know, it will make things up. I have seen it happen hundreds of times. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This happens all the time.
That's so scary though. Like that's
it's crazy. It's great. So I think you've heard about the lawyer, I think in New York, who used ChatGPT to do research, and got in a lot of trouble. ChatGPT made up cases.
Yeah.
Yes. Straight up made up cases.
I mean, if you're gonna do that, you got to go shepherdize at least, right? Like you got to check.
You would think, right? Yeah. So it's super scary. But so far, we've been able to engineer this feature in a way that we see nearly zero hallucinations. Again, I don't want to say zero, but almost. It's really highly reliable. I'll give you one other example. You can ask our model to return from a deposition any witness statements that seem inconsistent. So a witness might say, well, I don't know how hard the crash was. And then 30 pages later in the deposition say, well, my car was totaled and the front bumper was pushed in, all the way to the steering wheel. And the deposition will, the inconsistency finder that we have will literally go in and say, this witness said in one sentence that he didn't know how bad the crash was. And then in this other sentence, and it'll give you the site to the depot that the fender was pushed all the way to the steering wheel. And it'll say, this seems inconsistent. It'll actually do that work for you. It's amazing.
That's unbelievable. It's
amazing. Yep. It's really cool. And so the time savings is really significant. I've talked to people who say, well, look, you're going to put people out of work. No, I don't think so. The notion that AI will put people out of work, I think, rests on a couple faulty assumptions. Number one, the assumption that people will get put out of work requires you to believe that the amount of legal work in the world is a set fixed amount, and that if you do that much more efficiently, then you'll just need fewer lawyers. But the amount of legal work in the world isn't a set amount. There is a lot of legal work that doesn't get done, but should get done. Often it's legal work for people who don't have enough money to hire lawyers. So I actually think AI will play a pretty significant role in access to justice for those who can't afford it.
That's interesting. Okay.
It's really meaningful. And I have a lot of faith in the ability of a lawyer to find reasons to bill. Lawyers have always been pretty good at that. And yes, if a lawyer is using ChatGPT to summarize a deposition or do some things that might be more menial tasks, that lawyer is then going to instead spend time analyzing strategizing, doing higher level work for his or her client. So I just don't think that's what's going to happen. What I do think is that lawyers will take on more work, and they will be more efficient, but they will actually make more money for their law firms because the margins on the work that they do will be much higher. Law firms are service businesses, professionals who make their money typically on an hourly rate. If you can take away a lot of administrative and tedious tasks, there's a world in which instead of law firms running at a 20% profit or a 15% profit, they could maybe run at a 30% profit. Yeah. That's game changing. So I'm really excited.
That's unbelievable. Is there a unique offering for Filevine? Like, is there something that we've missed with like sort of a unique offering, or did we cover that already?
Yeah. So I think Filevine is probably the most customizable system on the market. I think, there's arguments that perhaps like Salesforce would be more customizable, but I'll tell you, like, there's challenges with that. Salesforce people have attempted to adopt that in legal many times, and I think with mixed results. Filevine is extraordinarily customizable. So if you want a system that your firm can grow with, all the way from a 4 to 5 user firm to a 500 user firm, Filevine really is the system to use. And we have law firms all the way ranging in those sizes and larger. Most case management systems really don't do that. They cater to kind of one size of client, in particular. Filevine's been, I think, our engineering team, and really this is Jim Blake, my co-founder, and Wes Cooper, one of our early engineers, but they knew early on that we needed a very customizable system that allowed lawyers to do any number of things with it. And so, we can handle a state prosecutor's needs. We can handle the needs of some of our biggest customers, with corporate customers. I don't know if I can say, I'll mention one. FedEx is a customer. Their in-house legal team uses Filevine.
Wow.
And not all of them, but a portion of their in-house legal team does. And we're handling their needs. We're handling public defender needs. We're handling prosecutor needs. We're handling the needs of business attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, and personal injury lawyers. And Filevine can do it all. And so that really is something we're proud of, because so few case management systems have that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And one thing I did notice about the website was you have like a lot of partners. Like I don't know if those partners are all integrated. I'm not like a huge tech person. I'm learning a lot as I go with these podcasts. It's been pretty incredible, these episodes. But how does that come to be? Like, how do you sort of work with these other, I'm not asking you to name any specifically, but like any startups, or like, how do you integrate them into the platform? Is that what happens?
Yeah, so it depends sort of on the partner. Sometimes there's a direct integration that we'll build. That's pretty rare, but for some partners, we'll do that. Sometimes it's an integration that a partner will build with us. That happens all the time.
Okay.
Filevine has an open API with extraordinarily high coverage. So you're not technical, and I wasn't technical when I started doing this, and I'm still.
Wow, you've learned a lot then. If you weren't technical,
I've learned. Yeah. Our API touches almost everything you would ever want to do with Filevine. An API is application programming interface. It just allows one software to talk to another piece of software.
Okay.
And we have a very well built out, again, API with a lot of coverage. So if there's somebody with a piece of technology and they would like to connect that piece of technology to Filevine, we make it really easy. That's something we're proud of. And there are a lot of applications that have built connections to Filevine. There's a lot of that.
It's like an example. Like, what kind of, like, if somebody wants to use your API or like build into Filevine, like what would be like the type of company that does that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different companies. I actually think 2 or 3, maybe even 4 companies that do sort of client portal type work. So Filevine doesn't really have its own client portal. We depend on third-party partners who've built those, and some of them have done just an amazing job. Again, I wouldn't want to call out any particular names, because whoever I name will be happy, and whoever I don't name is going to be very mad at me. But I will tell you, like, I am super happy with their products, and Filevine really doesn't intend to build a client portal. The company who built those and run those businesses, they've done it better than we'll ever do it. And we want to focus on our product and spend our time and attention there. And so by having an open API, it allows us to extend the product to do a whole bunch of things that we don't have to build, and allows other businesses to come and build on our platform and be successful, which we just think grows the pie for the entire file.
That's amazing. I love that. So you guys are growing through other businesses, sort of like connecting and integrating. Is there any other way that you see growth with Filevine?
So I'm a big believer in, for a tech guy, I'm a big believer in being on site, being live with customers. We hold a big event every it's every 18 months. We call it Lex Summit. So this is our big user conference.
Oh, nice.
And that's in Salt Lake City. It'll be in Salt Lake City again this coming September. So I really find a ton of personal joy and just fulfillment out of being with our customers, but also they learn a lot by being with each other and teaching each other best practices. And then, of course, our partners get to spend a lot of time with our customers and help them as well. So I'm a big believer in being together, like physically in the same room together, not just together over Zoom. And lately we've always done a lot of events. Filevine will go to, I think, 150 events this year.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Do you
Any
get
given
like a booth or something like that, or yeah?
3 booths. Yeah, we've got 3 booths because there are weeks when all 3 are in use at the same time, just at different conferences throughout the country.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Oh, so you have 3 booths, like, and sometimes they're all like in the same. I mean, in different places. Okay.
They're in different places. Yeah, I mean, we could have a booth in Chicago and in Florida and New York, all during the same week. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So yeah.
So congratulations on being named a CEO of the Year by Utah Business. Like, what does something like that mean to you?
Oh, it's very kind of them. I mean, it's first of all, what it really means is it's a reflection of the team and the execution the entire team has put into this business. I started off this podcast by telling you I am a naturally disorganized individual. I'm highly passionate, somewhat easily distracted, and I like to see the sort of ideas I have come to life. But I think that's true of a lot of founders, but that can be really challenging to manage. And so I have a team around me that is very understanding, brilliant, and takes these big ideas and makes them into reality. And that's really hard to find. And so to the extent there's any accolade that's ever come to me, that's really just a reflection of the team who I'm just incredibly proud and honored to work with.
Awesome. It's so nice. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to tell us about Filevine that I might have missed? I don't want to miss like the crux of it.
Oh my gosh, no. No, I mean, I don't think anything in particular. What I can tell you is we will continue to develop artificial intelligence products. We recently released immigration AI for immigration attorneys.
Wow.
And in the coming 2 or 3 weeks, we will have intake products that have artificial intelligence attached to them. And they are cool as hell, man.
Intake, okay.
Yeah, so these are, intake software. Filevine has, we acquired a company called Lead Docket in 2020, right before the pandemic, actually. And gosh, one of the best decisions I think I've ever made as CEO. And I'm just so proud of that team, the Lead Docket team, and what they mean to our business. Lead Docket's just a wonderful product. And that product is going to embed AI in some really cool ways. And we are just weeks away from announcing some of those features. I've seen them live in the software already. They're going to knock people's socks off. Intake will never be done without these features in the future. So we're really excited to roll that out. And so, the thing that I think hopefully attracts a customer to Filevine is that they're excited about continual innovation. We want Filevine to be a law firm's secret weapon. So whether it's Lead Docket or Filevine or Periscope or any number of our other products, Filevine Document Assembly, we want those products to form the basis of a competitive weapon, such that our customers are faster, more accurate, and deliver better service than those who don't have Filevine. So to me, that's really what sets us apart, is sort of the pace of innovation. I'll tell you though, you asked me what sets Filevine apart. I do think it's the pace of innovation, but we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Last week we have 8 environments. Environments, just think of them as like kind of buckets of customers. And of those 8, 6 ran absolutely perfectly and 2 did not. And so we had an outage last week on Tuesday that honestly was just terrible, unacceptable to me, unacceptable to our customers, and something that I feel like in my soul when something like that happens. For any customer who's listening to this and experienced that, first of all, I apologize. And secondly, I hope you know I don't sleep when those things happen.
Yeah,
Like,
I bet. No, I bet. This is your this is your brainchild. This is your thing.
it is.
Like this is your thing. Like it's I get it. I know what you're saying. Like you want everybody to access this perfectly, and that like you never want to see that happen when somebody's doing their work.
So, go ahead.
Well, what keeps you motivated with Filevine? Like, what keeps you going? I mean, I love how you can kind of connect it back to like when you were an attorney and you filled a gap of something that was really needed in the profession. But like, what keeps you going now? Like,
yeah, it's a great question. So, two major things. Number one, I love seeing law firms succeed and become more profitable, more stable, more consistent than they ever were before. And really fun when we see our technology get implemented by a law firm and that law firm achieves successes and kind of heights of revenue and profitability that they haven't seen before. But honestly, the thing that is probably more motivating to me is that I know how hard being a lawyer is. And I know that the pain of being a lawyer can sometimes affect client service. So a frantic, nervous, overwhelmed, overworked lawyer who is maybe in danger of missing a deadline or an important piece of evidence that could help their client, that's a lawyer who's not delivering great client service. And whenever we help a lawyer do that part of their job better, we make their life less stressful and we make the client they are serving more successful. And by far, of all the things that kind of get me up in the morning to keep doing this, it's that.
I love it. I feel like it's so well thought out, like the reasoning for that, and it's so important. And I can hear the passion in it, especially because you were a lawyer, like you were there. So I think that always is a big connection when you have a startup or a business, and you've obviously been very successful. So congratulations on that.
We've got a million things to do, as Hamilton says, but thank you. I appreciate that.
For sure. Is there anything else we've missed or that you'd like to mention?
Oh, not at all. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for doing it after hours, Benny. I appreciate it.
Of course. I hope we can connect some more, and we're launching Lawyer Stories Connect soon. It's been sort of a slow go, but we hope to include you all as Filevine as a preferred partner, and we could talk to your staff about that.
You totally should, and you gotta come out to Salt Lake, and let's do a show live at our Lex Summit in September.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Hey, I'm a big Celtics fan, so
there you go.
Yeah,
we'll see. That sounds awesome.
It's really been a pleasure. Stay right there for a moment. Ryan Anderson from Filevine. Finally got Filevine on here. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in wherever you are in the world today. Enjoy yourselves. Cheers.